Thank you, Omar.
No, I'm not a writer.
Okay. Happy day. Happy day, everyone. Be happy, be in love with yourselves. My name is Omar, coming at you guys from the West Coast, British Columbia, Canada, on this not so bad day. It's not cooking like an oven here today, so it's wonderful. And our NDE series continues, and it has been an incredible series so far. And thank you. What is going on? I've got a double going on here. All right, here we go. What a wonderful series has been so far. Kathy, who have we had on today, and who have we had on so far this week? We'll do a quick rundown, and then we'll just quickly talk about what's happened in the last couple of days, because we've learned a lot of things. And then today we have a wonderful guest, Peter Panagore, coming on. And he's going to give us some enlightenment and some awareness. So welcome everyone, and welcome Kathy.
Thank you. Well, I am so excited to do this whole series with you. The first person that we had on Sunday's name is Tricia Barker, and her last name now is Barton, because she just got married. But anyway, and she is a very eloquent and capable presenter for the near-death experiencer community, because she can articulate her experience so well. And then next we had Dr. Pamela Gerali, who is one of my favorite people that I get to work with, and that explained about her 15th. She had 15 past lives experienced all within 2 hours. Well, she says an hour and a half, but I have to think it's at least 2 hours. And she was sane enough to talk about it.
That's right.
Through it, because most people, when they have one awakening experience, when they remember touching the void or dying, they walk around talking to themselves for a little while. But she had 15 in one spot in one time.
Incredible. I was thinking about that this morning.
And she's so wonderful, you guys. Oh my gosh, her energy is so beautiful. So she cleaned house.
Yeah, she was wonderful. I really liked that. Actually, I watched that video yesterday before I brought Paul on, and I was looking at her blueprint, and I'd like to learn more about that. So good stuff with Dr. Gerali.
And here today we have Peter Panagore, who is a reverend. He was a reverend in the Congregationalist Church, which I used to be a member of also. And he is a mystic and brilliant guide to our connection to the unseen. And I'm very excited to talk to him again. I love talking to him. Don't tell his wife. Okay, and then Jose Hernandez is an amazing artist who had a near-death experience. He was doing construction or some sort of civil engineering, and he had an accident and woke up afterwards and started doing just art and poetry. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, really looking forward to speaking with him, because I love poetry.
Yeah. And he's a neighbor. He's you have to meet him, Omar. He lives near you somewhere.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by that, and I'm looking forward to speaking with Jose to find out exactly where he's at, because if he's not too far away, I'd love to hook up and maybe do a live talk, in person talk, and that would be wonderful.
Yeah, you'll like him. And then the next person that we get to have on is the beautiful, amazing Brooke Grove. And Brooke has a shamanic type expression. After her experience, she's been exploring trauma informed and after effects of near-death experiences. And she is a huge guide. She has all these different techniques that are traditional medicine as well as I would say indigenous activations that
Hmm.
she uses in her work, and she's just remarkable. And then last but not least is my friend Caroline Chang. And Caroline Chang is a truther, I guess you would say. The way that I met her was her son passed, and she started getting connected with him on the other side. And then Sonia Rinaldi actually started sending her pictures of her son and voice recordings from her son to her. And Caroline was featured in a documentary film. So we've got a star-studded lineup for everyone this week. I hope you enjoy it. And then last but not least, we get to have on next Saturday, this coming Saturday, we get to have questions from Omar and I. After hearing everyone talk, we get to figure out what questions that are still left. There's some discussion needed. So, right, Omar, then we get to ask what else. I mean, you need
I,
money.
yes, I would say on Saturday, bring your shovel and your axe pick because we are going to be rabbit holing down a lot of rabbit holes, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm so looking forward to speaking with Caroline Chang because I find that really really interesting that she's getting audio and visuals from wherever it is. I've suggested that there's a prime reality, and then we're actually in the copy of a prime reality, and right. So I think that's going to be a very, very engaging and interesting conversation.
Well,
It's
well,
fascinating.
well, the thing that Caroline also and I have in common is we both have done volunteer work for Humanities Team, which was it was Conversations with God, started by Neil Donald Walsh, and
Hmm.
I was really involved for 3 years, and she was involved for about the same amount of time. So there's so much great ways for her to connect the dots.
Hmm.
You'll really like her. Well,
So
I like everybody.
I'm liking everybody so far. I just find this NDE to be a very interesting topic and a subject because it really, this is like deep, deep consciousness talk, right? Because I'm interested in consciousness and I want to know what consciousness is. And then when these people have this experience, my idea is that they're, connecting with consciousness at some particular level, but then the activation that they get when they come back is of something just a total phenomenon because before whatever happened to them, let's say they couldn't play a violin and then they come back and they can play this extremely complicated instrument like a master, right? Or mathematics where you can look deep into formulas and understand math at a fundamental level and give humanity like equations which will benefit us and things like that, right? And art and mysticism and all of that, it's all an activation which I think is very cool because I wonder if we all had like a kundalini experience, like a forced NDE like they did back in the old days, if that would like activate some of this superhuman abilities or gifts within us, and then we can become unmanageable, right? And
We already are. Well, see, the other part of this that I really want everyone to understand is that they did a survey like 4 years ago, and like 80% of the world's population believed in ghosts. But then when they also asked about reincarnation, that there wasn't hardly any numbers there. So there's some disconnect that the near-death experiencers, their articulation helps you understand that space in between, because and that's what I'm enjoying. Plus I had a spiritually transformative experience. I did not have a near-death experience, and I did not have the vocabulary until I started listening to these brilliant people like Peter, I just love listening to him because the way that they can articulate what I feel, because it's feeling, it's not here, it's here. So you get blasted from here and you can't express it without listening to these people that figured out how to express it.
You know, that's a really good point, Kathy, because this language that we're speaking, English, is not a very good language to express yourself from internally. Everything with English synthetics is based on expression of the external world, but when it comes to the inside, you know, it just simply has no words. So perhaps what we need to do is become like multilingual and begin to learn other languages and maybe try to express through that, right? That'd be a super cool, you know, superhuman power, I think, if you can speak every language on the planet and, you know,
Well,
be that.
I speak Italian, but I'm really rusty. I need to practice. But
Okay.
that is the difference of Romance language. You
Mhm.
feel the color.
Yeah.
Versus English, which and German, which is this concise. You know, you almost need 3 adjectives
Hmm.
to add to the primary word or adverbs to get the same feeling. But
Hmm.
well, here, Peter's figured it out.
Yeah,
Peter's
I like that. I've seen Peter on your show several times, and every time he comes on, I like it. I've enjoyed his conversations with you. How about we do a little intro, and then we'll bring Peter on. So,
okay.
guys, Peter Panagore is an international Audible best-selling author of Heaven is Beautiful and is optioned for a film. Peter Panagore first died in 1980 while ice climbing and died again in 2015 of a heart attack. Both times he chose to return to life the sake of love and caring. Peter earned his BA in English at the University of Massachusetts and his MDiv at Yale, focusing on Western mysticism, and then served progressive church communities for 2 decades in New England. Recruited to television, Peter spent 15 years writing stories of hope and inspiration for his daily broadcasts on NBC TV during News Center, Maine, reaching 80,000 viewers a day. As a cultural influencer and renowned storyteller, his first book, 2 Minutes for God, is a devotional book of stories drawn from his TV and FM spots and is Maine's bestseller. Peter has had multiple mystically transformative experiences over his lifetime, which he encourages through his 40 years of centering prayer and Kriya yoga practice. Check out his show, Not Church, No Doctrine, No Dogma, No Bravo, Sierra, Just Mysticism, live on YouTube. Welcome, Peter. Let's bring Peter on. Or are we okay? I thought
Thank
Kathy.
you, Omar. Thank you. Hi,
Uh,
Kathy. Good to see you
hi,
again.
hi. So you just read, Omar, that Peter has a weekly no church YouTube presentation, which I just love. I love it. I love it.
Thanks. It's
Tell
all
us
about
about
language. I heard you talking, Omar. It's all about language and deconstruction and metaphor, simile, cross-cultural examination of mystical literature, but primarily focused in the teachings of Jesus. Because when I died, he became a different person when I came back. So when I went to Catholic high school and I read the Bible because that's what we did. I read the Gospels, and I had this presentation and theological understanding. But when I died, I came back with no belief system at all. I came back with an experience of the direct divine reality. And I, when I read Jesus, I was like, this guy's enlightened. And I was also reading the Upanishads in translation and the Vedas and all these other books as well, where I found that metaphor. You were talking about learning other languages, and definitely you are what you think, and the language you think in defines your world. And but all the mystics, they all use metaphor, because
Mhm.
no matter what language you have, it's always unspeakable.
Yeah, it's you got to read in between the lines and listen in between the words, and that's why in-person communication is so much more superior, I would say, compared to by screen, because in person you can feel the person's energy and you can see how their body is moving, and you can read all of that while you're conversing. And get that deeper message of what they're trying to say, right? Instead of like say sitting on a screen here with I don't know, Sadhguru, and just getting his message instead of just simply seeing him sitting there and feeling his energy and kind of it's different, and to me that's a form of a language as well, like the language of energy, and we all have it.
Yes, we do. And one of the things I discovered when I was in TV is that it transmits through lenses and across microphones. It has, because it's timeless. So before I would write these pieces, I'd meditate when I write these pieces, and then I'd write them in a meditative flow state. And then I'd get to the TV station and I'd meditate in the studio when it was dark before the producers came in. And then I'd stand in front of the camera and I'd pull in my chi, pull it up from my feet, raise my prana up, and let it ride inside my throat chakra and project through my eyes. And all of the pieces that I wrote were all carriers. This is what I was experimenting with. I was trying to see if the language would carry the light, as it has down through the centuries, in pieces of music and pieces of art and pieces of poetry that can resonate in a heart. And I discovered that actually it can transmit. And I only found this out because the viewing audience wrote to me and told me so. And it was 2-year-olds and puppy dogs and grandmothers and atheists and Buddhists and Christians and fundamentalists and Jews. And there is, because of timelessness, if you dive deep inside yourself and reconnect to your original self, there it is everywhere you are. It's everywhere. And so it can be communicated through lens. It is best in person. Because there is this extra, it's definitely better in person, it's stronger, which is what happens at the IANS conferences.
Yeah.
When all these NDEers get together, there's like this huge radiant bubble of divine energy, of cosmic self, of whatever name you want to name this thing. It's experiential.
And I think my hairs would be standing up, like walking through like static electricity with all these people around, and it would be just zap, zap, zap.
What it feels like, honestly, Omar, is home. It's when you're around all these people, and in Philadelphia was our last in-person conference, and now we're having another one in a week or so. There's over 350 people in person, up to 500 people, and then there's people online, and it's palpable. It's as though you have created a field, a space, a coherence in the field of love. And egos drop by, even though some of the people are researchers and some people are experiencers and some people are like me that had spiritually transformative experiences, not near-death experiences. You walk in and I just went, I'm home. I mean, it was coherent. That's what I can tell you. So it's not like you, but I'm going to be in contrast. I work on Zoom and I have since 2015. And I do a lot of alchemy and energy stuff through it. And I'm going to go with what Peter's saying, because I've worked with a lot of healers, and we have done products that capture every bit of their vibrancy and their energy in digital form. So it just depends. It's more fun in person, for sure, hugging people and eating dinner and getting to know them better. But the energy of this is, I mean, I can feel it right now. I'm sweating.
I may I jump in for a second, Omar, and say that we always, before digital came, I was always pre-recorded. So we put it on tape, physical tape. And then when I was there was this transition to digital, and it went onto digital before it was broadcast. And then it just sat in some computer somewhere, and it still carried this resonance.
Yeah, my point was that it's more fun in person.
Oh yes, I 100% agree. 1,000%.
Yeah,
10,000.
That's my point. I've seen a lot of energy work done through the screen, and and for me, again, is it the screen that's doing that, or is it that energetic connection with the person who's watching? Right, kind of like become like a quantum entanglement type of thing, to where, say, Peter, I'm watching you, and then I connect with you, and then I'm connected to that energy, and then I can feel that energy and I can take that energy in, and then you can store it in the computer for however long, and then come back, say 100 years from now, play that, and then still be able to connect with that energy that like your energy, right? Because that's what really people are connecting to. It's like your audience that's writing you, and they're resonating with you on screen. But I wonder if they're like energetically, like, connecting with you at a,
Oh, I say, yeah,
like,
absolutely.
right? And then
Hmm.
once you're off screen, and once that, um, you know, the mind perception is focused somewhere else, then that energetic shift, it just kind of, breaks itself until the next time. And we have
Sure.
that ability to do that with everyone and everything.
100%.
What do you think, Kathy?
Well, I agree, and it's all imperfection, in a kind of perfection that I'm not sure I understand. I mean, I love trying to figure out the quantum physics side of all of this, but it seems like it's this field of potentiality that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, or the frequency appears, or the opportunity appears, and so it's so brilliantly designed. It just I'm so excited about it instead of in fear of it.
Mhm.
That's what I'm hoping all of these conversations will do. Will have people be excited about and wonder about it rather than be in fear.
Yeah, for sure. Was that my microphone or was that
Yeah,
yours?
that was not mine. I think it was.
Yeah,
It's all.
something's crawling around in the system.
And I'm warm, so something's happening. Yeah, it could be anything that I'm doing. Sorry, I think I'm in control.
So, Peter, tell me about your near-death experience, because you died on ice, and and I have some experience with cold and ice. I'm up here in Canada, and I'm in British Columbia, and we have 9 months of winter up here, land of snow and ice, and so I'd like to understand your experience as like what happened, and then your connection to the netherworld, right, to the next one, and what happened, and then but more so what I'm interested in is like how did your personality change, right? Like like we can understand that this traumatic experience happened, okay, and then but what happened afterwards, right? It's like what led you on this road to become who you are today, because obviously it started from that day forward. And I'd like to understand what you were like before then as well, right? So we have this contrast understanding of like how this experience you know
Transformed.
yeah, transformed you, and and really transformed hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people around the world as well through your broadcasts and podcasts and TV. So it's been, a pretty profound thing that's happened. Like when you throw a stone in a still lake, you get that ripple effect, and this seems like as somebody threw a stone in our timeline, and that timeline's having that ripple effect. So it's quite profound. So I'd like to understand that from you, please.
Sure. Well, I'll start where you ended and say that a lot of near-death experiencers, the stone that was thrown into the waters was science, medical science and cardiac care, that about 50 years ago or 1960s began and then spread globally as technology improved. Tens and tens of millions of more people were resuscitated and essentially became, I'm not sure what the word is. It's not an astronaut or a psychonaut. It's something else. Thanatopic knot, a death knot. Um, and, uh, and they got sent over and they came back. And there's like tens and tens and tens of millions of us where, because science is, because human thinking and human technology has developed to the point unexpectedly, okay, they were trying to save lives. They didn't know that the consciousness was not attached to the body. I mean, mystics have known that forever and ever around the world, amen, in every culture and religion,
Hmm.
but science had no idea, and philosophy had no idea. And theology, well, they weren't really clear about it, a lot of them. So, and even if they believed it, so few had experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's the stone I see thrown, and I'm not one of those. That the second time I died, I chose to come back, but I was also in an ambulance, and they were tuning me up at the time. So there was sort of this symbiosis, I guess, that kept me here. But the first time I died ice climbing in your neighborhood. I had spent about 8 days backcountry skiing, and this is in 1980, into Mount Assiniboine in the eastern part of your province.
That's
And then
right.
we finished our trip just north of Banff on Cirrus Mountain,
Mm-hmm.
so a couple hours, and I'm not sure how many hours
I'm
south of
very
Jasper.
familiar with it. Very familiar with it. I've spent a great deal of time in Banff and in Jasper.
Well, right in between there's a place called Cirrus Mountain and Lower Weeping Wall, part of Upper Weeping Wall too. It's a major climb, but in the wintertime, Lower Weeping Wall gets climbed. I was an outdoors person before I died. I was a natural born mystic. I'd had other mystical experiences, much smaller. They were big to me, but they were in comparison much smaller after this happened. But they also came into focus and transformed me. Every mystical experience transforms a person. Every single time you have a spiritually transformative experience that has significance to you and leaves wisdom or noetic understanding inside you, you get born again. You're a little bit different. Near-death experience is a radical shift, and that was the biggest for sure. So anyway, I was 21 years old, 1980, and I had been in the National Ski Patrol, had been a Boy Scout, grew up outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I would call you Oma. Hey, Oma, how you doing? I'm Pete. Peter, if I was speaking with my native accent. But I'm just trying to be funny. So anyway, I don't know if that was funny to anybody, but there
No,
you go. Anyway,
I got some Chinese friends that call me Oma as well. They're like, "Hey, Oma, Oma, how you
Oma,
doing,
that's how I would
Oma?"
say it. My family,
Yeah,
they call me Peter.
yeah.
So anyway, so I was in Montana as a national student exchange, not going back to my home. And there's a picture of where that's it right there. That's the place. And if I could point to it, but it's in the left screen. It says Weeping Wall Photos Diagram summitpost.org. That sweep of ice that comes down the middle in a inverted triangle. It's the right side where we climbed up. That was the climb. Oh, there's the route right there. There you go. And yeah. And the route we came down is to the left there. So with the purple rope, we went up the red rope. We came down kind of the purple rope. Anyway, so what happened is that I'd been a mountain climber, I'd been a backpacker, been a Boy Scout, winter camper, all this kind of stuff. And I'll say that I was already had my career plans in place. I was going to be an architect like my dad, and was already trying to draw and all that kind of stuff. And that plays into what happens after. So long story short, although I'd been a heavy backpacker, climbed in lots of mountain ranges in all sorts of conditions and all sorts of weathers, all sorts of seasons, I had never ice climbed before. I had used a lot of rope and done a lot of rock, but never ice climbed. And I could come up with a long, tall ice axe and a very short, small ice hammer to make this 500 or 600 foot pitch climb, 3-pitch climb, which meant, this was my error, that I had to rest. I couldn't. You put an ice axe in the ice and you can dangle. Maybe you've seen video. You put the ice axe in and you can rest. It's got a strap, and so you don't have to use your muscles. You get to use a little. Just spread your hand, and your feet are on crampons sticking into the ice, so you've got contact in 3 places. And then you get my other hand though. I had this little tiny hammer, and I could put it in the ice and lean it in the ice and create the proper 45-degree angle to support myself, to pull myself up. But I could never let go of it. It had the strap was on the bottom, and it wasn't meant to climb. You can climb with it. That's what the point of my climbing with it. You can climb with it, but it was really made for chipping holes for ice for then putting in the ice screws, and you put that like a lever. So all that meant is that our climb took really long. So by the time we were an hour or 2 or 3 before we reached the top of the climb, we already knew that we were in serious trouble. Some of the teams that were climbing that day they were all leaving before we even got anywhere near the top. And when we finally got to the top, because I had to go so slow because my muscles burned out so rapidly because I had to cling the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
we got up to the top of that flat area that we just saw at sunset, and this was March. So March in British Columbia, March in Alberta, it's really cold, as we say from
Yeah,
where I
very
live,
cold.
is wicked cold. And
Minus 30, minus 35, wind chill factor, minus 40, 45. Yeah, very, very cold.
and the temperature went down like that.
Mm-hmm. I know
And
all about that.
so we were dressed for the daytime, and all the other teams, they descended. And I should add to this, okay? Tim, my climbing partner, was a certified lead climber. So
Mm-hmm.
he knew what he was doing. He was certified in ice. So, but we agreed that I could climb with this thing, partly because of my bravado, and partly because he wanted to climb too. So we're like, our egos fed each other. Yeah, we can do this.
Yeah.
So we get to the top, temperature drops, we're dressed for the daytime. I'm wearing wool. It's in the days before. Polypropylene had just come out, which is, everybody wears polypropylene now as long underwear in the wintertime. But in those days, you had wool, and poly top had just come out. So I was wearing wool pants and a wool sweater and a wool shirt and it's poly top and a shell. And that was warm enough for the day, and a helmet and crampons and all that stuff. But when the temperature dropped, immediately I was underdressed by 30 degrees, and hypothermia set in immediately. And I should let people know also that I'd been on the National Ski Patrol since I was in high school, and I was currently on the National Ski Patrol at this time at Bridger Bowl in Bozeman, Montana. Mm-hmm. And there was a day when it was 50 below on the mountain. Wow. And so we were super aware of frostbite and hypothermia. We had a review before we went out, mm-hmm. and pulling people off the mountain all day. This is about a month before this. So it was right fresh in my mind what's going on. And we both knew as soon as it got dark and sun went down, a bazillion stars came out. So it wasn't pitch dark. It was starlit dark that you can get under a sky that is so full of stars and so many colors that there's almost no space between them. And so we could still sort of see. There was enough light that we could see by. And Tim hauled up the rope really fast, and it became this huge knot because we were scared. We were terrified. We knew I knew the trouble we were in hours before we got to the top. I knew the temperature was going to drop. Shivering began. All my muscles began shivering independent of each other. So it wasn't like a pulse, like your heartbeat. It was like this crazy quilt of movement of like worms all over my body, contracting and expanding at their own pattern, and big muscles and small muscles twitching, and my jaw was clattering like a cartoon. And the sun goes down, and Tim hauls up the rope, and he's scared, and he doesn't lay the line correctly, and it becomes this 300-foot knot. And I have to take off my gloves to untangle this thing, and frostbite begins. And Tim and I are meanwhile having this conversation with our clattering jaw, trying to talk and not bite our tongues. And knowing the desperate situation that we were in, we knew the first things we talked about was we are going to die. This was, we were 500 or 600 feet up, and this is a deadly situation that we're in, and we're already shivering. We've only been in the dark a half an hour, and already we're in desperate, dangerous territory. So we talked about trying to spend the night where we were, but we decided that we didn't have any energy, nothing to keep us warm, and we were already cold. No food, no water, no warm clothes. We were wet too, because it's a sweaty sport, and ice is falling down your neck and getting inside your coat and all that. At least in those days. Maybe nowadays they wear tight collars. I don't know. But it was my first and last ice climb. I continued climbing mountains, but that was my last ice climb. So sun goes down. We discuss, can we survive here? And we decide that no, we can't survive here. We're going to die. So Tim took the one end of the line and the end of a rope. This is something I always find fascinating for me as a rope guy. Is the end of the line is called the bitter end. So whenever you get a piece of rope, that very nubby end that's melted, or that's the bitter end of a rope. So Tim takes the bitter end at one end and he ties it in a knot around his waist. I take a length of line and I knot it around myself. I take the rest of the line, I schlep it on my shoulder, and we've got clanking carabiners and ice screws and axes, and we're scared out of our minds. But one of the things that the week before, we'd done this long snow caving trip to Mount Assiniboine, maybe like 8 days of backcountry skiing with a shovel, digging a hole in the snow and camping out. And we had this fabulous trip where we learned to utterly trust each other and understand each other's skills. And one of the things I learned about Tim during this week, when we had a smaller adventure of nearly freezing, which I rarely talk about, but was because it wasn't anything in comparison. But I learned that Tim keeps his head. He was totally in control of his fear. And that's how I am too. And so I was that night in particular. The thing about knowing that you're going to die is that it tends to focus the mind very sharply. And one of the things that rock climbing and ice climbing and mountaineering and lots of other kinds of things we do in our lives, but particularly these high risk sports where, like rock climbing or ice climbing, you're already a self-selected, super focused person. So you're already come to this thing with this capacity and not only do you have this capacity, it trains you in the experience to stay exactly where you are, to be here now. You're not in the future, you're not in the past, you're not down below yourself, you're not above yourself, you're exactly where you are, paying attention to exactly what you need to pay attention to live. And so that type of person is the kind of guy Tim was. And so Tim, we were both terrified, but we both kept our cool, very level-headed. So we crossed over to the first traverse, and I can make this shorter. I realize I'm going on and on. Do you want me to keep going? You want me to get to the death part? I can end this by saying we had a very terrible night.
No. I want to
get worse.
Yeah, no, I want to hear the whole story because
I didn't want to. Well, I didn't want to run over. I didn't want to step on your time.
No.
Okay,
it's your time, brother. So you do with it as you like, and I'd love to. I'm enjoying this very much because it's allowing me to understand who you were prior to your experience, and so I'm gonna have full faculties on this afterwards. So yeah, please go on.
All right, so that's great. That's good to hear. I'm glad that it's filling in as I go along because I was there because I was who I was. I was also there. There's something else I should throw in here. I was in Montana and not back in Boston on this spring break because I essentially was staying away from my family. And that plays into what happens next. I was like, I'm not going home to there. That's all brokenness and pain. I'm not going back there. But I had a loving family. Don't get me wrong. My family was absolutely loving and wonderful. And then this thing happens, which I'll talk about in a little while. So we're on the ice. We're click-clacking because we're click-clacking with our crampons and we're jangling with our aluminum ice screws and carabiners, ice and on rock and ice and on rock. And you could see the ledge up there. You saw the ledge. It's off to the right of us is the mountain. And then down to the left of us is this long fall. And so we're off. We go over to the first traverse and there's a tree sticking up. And one of the things that happens in hypothermia is you begin to lose your reason. You begin to make poor decisions because you become confused, because the brain blood flow starts slowing down everywhere. I mean, muscles stop working. So my body's twitching with all these shivers, trying to keep me warm. That's what's going on. But it's also consuming all my energy to do that. So it's and I don't have any more food to feed this thing. And simultaneous to all of this, your muscles are still freezing. So they're still getting colder and colder and colder, which means they get more and more difficult to move. I don't know if you ever jumped into an ice cold lake, a really like glacial lake or a glacial river or the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, where suddenly you're so cold that if you're out there long enough, it's hard to move your body. That's what's going on. It's begins hard to move.
I was at a lake up in just past Whistler, and this was August, but this lake was glacier fed. And I stuck my toe in it, and I was like, "Oh, it's not bad." And then I jumped into it, not realizing the cold of this lake. And when I jumped in, oh man, I just I just clenched myself, and I jumped out as quickly as I jumped in, and I was cold after that for the rest of the night. It was bone chilling, and I had to sit around the fire for hours and hours and hours, and I didn't like it. I've never done anything like that since then.
Yeah, cold is I wear a wetsuit when I swim now.
I can't blame you.
There you go. And I get teased, a lot by people because I'm always very warmly dressed. I try never ever to be cold. I do
Mhm.
not like being cold. And
Yeah,
I'm still a winter person. What were
I'm
you
a
going to say?
summer guy. I'm a summer guy. I don't do winter at all. You know, I'm in the worst environment for a
Yeah,
guy like me.
you definitely are. Well, I like the hot. My body's built for hot weather, but my sports tend to be winter. Um,
Yeah, my whole body is meant for like, plus 25,
uh,
plus 28 about there, ideal
it's
temperature.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, so it was way colder than that by 60 degrees downward, and the our brains were beginning to have problem processing information and making wise decisions. And so what we were supposed to do around this tree, Tim's like, okay, this is what we do when we encounter this thing, because he knew, because he was certified. So you take a piece of webbing, and webbing is this flat nylon tube. It's flat and it's very strong, and you tie it in a square knot, and you have a loop, and then you put the loop around the tree, and then you put the rope through the loop, so that when you descend, the rope slides right down. But what that means is you lose the webbing. And Tim's like, this webbing costs money. I'm not going to lose that. And I'm like, yeah, it's a good idea. You want to keep that. And but the tree was rough barked, and the rope was wet, damp. Everything there was okay. So it was cold enough that everything was ice, but the rope was lying on my shoulder. So I have enough heat that the rope got a little warm, and so we threw the rope around the tree instead of through the webbing, and Tim went down first, and I went down second, and we went to that landing, which you saw on that purple line. There is this kind of flat space there, and we went to that space, and yeah, it's above that the gully to the left. I can't read the name of it. Sniveling Gully. There's this kind of flat spot there. I think, or it's either below. All right. So we traversed across the top there, and then we came down onto one, two, one, two. How's this going? 1, 2, 3. So yeah, so we came down to where the arrow points at Sniveling Gully there,
Hmm.
at the bottom of the inside arrow, not the
Hmm.
very bottom one. I should say that the two angled purple lines on the left. There's an arrow that goes to my left, and then there's an arrow making a part of a triangle. There's a
Hmm.
flat area, so that's where we come down to, and you can see above there. There's rock right there. So
Yeah.
when we rappelled down, so I'm looking at this. I went back there. Okay, I have to look at this very carefully here. No, I'm going to say that it was the above Sniveling Gully, and then we went
That
down
flat
that
spot
crack,
above there.
that flat spot, and then we came down where that arrow is,
Yeah.
and we landed up down the bottom. So then there's another arrow that goes down way down to the left there.
Hmm.
We landed. That's the next rappel. So there's one, 2, and then the ground is the third place that we stood. So anyway, so we rappelled down under past left hand and down to that area, and there was a bit of an overhang for us, and which meant that we kind of free rappelled down in a little bit of space. And when we get to the bottom of this when we get to that space that we were in, I was the last one down, so I took the rope off of I had made a figure 8 with carabiners. I took it out of the figure 8, and then I pulled the rope, and the rope was stuck on the tree. And I pulled with all my weight, and the rope is frozen to the tree, and now I can't move it at all. And so Tim comes over, and the snow's maybe up to our knees or just below just the top of our knees, and we're stumbling because now we're beginning to lose our coordination. And both of us, if you're a winter person, you know it. You've experienced what's commonly called post-holing. And post-holing, at least in the eastern United States, is when you have to lift your knee up really high and you stick your foot down in the snow because you can't move your foot forward. You have to make these post holes. And so both of us could post-hole, but neither of us could post-hole. We were just tripping over ourselves because our bodies were beginning to freeze. So Tim comes over, and the rope is frozen to the tree, and with both of our weights on it, we yank on this thing, and we can't get it free. So we're now in our second very desperate situation. The rope is frozen above us. We have no way to reascend this. Partly there's this little bit of an overhang, so there's this free space, and so we don't know what to do. Tim takes responsibility. Tim took responsibility as the more trained person and decided to ascend the rope with no safety protection of screws in the ice. So he was going to climb back up the rope. And he was going to do this by using these two hitches. They're like, a hitch is a kind of knot that is loose when there's no pressure on it and tight when there is. It's a particular kind of hitch for tying a round rope to make huge loops for your foot to go in, and then your hand grabs the hitch, so the loops are as long as your body, and you can pull up with your foot with the rope with the hand at the same time, and then when you push down with your foot, it locks it in place. And it's a very efficient hitch, so you can actually do this. This is not, it's dangerous, but the rope itself, the hitch actually works. So I took the rope and I wrapped it around my waist and I made the whole thing as taut as possible. And Tim, having tied these two with very thin line, saddled up with his carabiners on the loops and began to ascend. And he got up some distance. I don't know how, because my face was in the snow. And he yelled, "Falling!" and which is what you yell when there's a rock falling or you're falling. Actually, you yell "rock" when the rock's falling. You yell "falling" when you're falling. So his foot might have got caught in the line. We're not sure exactly what happened or what happened. I don't really remember. But anyway, when he came down, the rope came with him. So the rope was free, and so now we untie these hitches and we get the rope together. And at this point, a car comes down the Icefields Parkway, a truck, and it pulls into the parking lot. And there's been one car all night, and because this is the middle of the wilderness, and this vehicle parks in the parking lot, which is right across the street, and there's a Saskatchewan River right behind it. And we jump up and down and we wave our arms, and we're like, "It's the warden! It's got to be the warden!" Because we signed into the wilderness log as you're supposed to. So my name is this, I'm going to this place, I'm going in at this time, I expect to come out at that time. We didn't come out at any time, so he came looking for us sometime after dark. Flashes his lights, we're like, oh my god, he sees us. We're suddenly heartened and feel more courage, and we're off to the next rappel. And that other arrow that went across onto this rocky area, that's where we went. And there was an iron pin with epoxy, so over Sniveling Gully, down Sniveling Gully somewhere over there, and there was an iron pin in there with a ring on it, epoxied into the mountain, and we put the rope through that, and Tim descended down to the next rappel. This all happened pretty fast. The moon had risen a little bit, and so we were able to see better, and plus we have all this courage because the warden's there. But in the middle of this, I got to tell you how I was feeling. So at this point, my body was consuming itself. I had no energy left, and I felt like my body was eating itself in order to drive itself forward. And I had willed myself. I was willing myself to proceed. But then I reached this place deep inside my brain, like my reptilian mind, way back the dinosaurs, or maybe early hominids. I don't really know, but way down inside my mind, I tapped into this place of survival. And in this place of survival, my will worked with this place of survival, and I aimed at this with all of myself. And I found this incredibly deep reservoir so the willing became less effortful and became more instinctual. And I drove myself forward, singular thought of survive. And every step drew energy, every word we spoke drew energy, so we minimalized our talking. We tried to be very careful with every single movement that we were making, because an extra movement, that's a second off your life or a minute off your life of energy, because we're pressed up against this dying. We know, we still know we're going to die, and unless we succeed in getting off. But now we feel good because we got this warden looking at us. We make this rappel. Tim's down there first, and there's this ledge that you can't see in that photograph. And on this ledge, there are two iron pins some distance apart, pinned into the mountain with epoxy, with rings on them and carabiners. And webbing with carabiner on it, so you can click into safety.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like a place where people come to climb, and it's easy to rappel because there's a line right there already at the top, and it's a great climb and all that stuff. So Tim's to my left, I'm to the right. We're on a ledge, maybe I don't know, 4 feet deep, maybe, I don't know. And then there's this 150 foot drop behind us, and around the corner, we had to kind of turn this corner to get here, is the rappel line, the pitch that we came down. So I tied one end of the line to my harness. I got it out of the figure 8 knot. I tied one to the end of my harness before I got out of the figure 8, just saying. So then I took the other bitter end, and I tossed it out around the corner, and it went with this wide arc, and I yanked on the rope, but it jammed in some kind of V like that in the ferry. I didn't even pull it 6 inches, not even and, oh my God. And it's wrapped around this corner. So there's this edge of stone. And if anybody's ever used a garden hose or a rope and you flick this thing and you get a little wave for a minute, you can lift it up over something. There's no lifting around a corner. So there was no way I could shake the line loose. And so I just kept pulling on this thing, and it was like, what's going on? It's like the rope's stuck. And I keep pulling on it. Now the warden, who sees us in this position, we're only one pitch up. He's like, toots the horn and flashes the lights, and off he goes. And now we're like, oh my God, we are alone again, and we're in a terrible position, because we can't Persic hitch or no Persic hitch. You can't go back up a rope that's not attached to anything. It's jammed, but it's not attached. And so all we could do was pull on the rope. Hypothermia continues to advance. My feet are like ice blocks you get at the convenience store. They're just like blocks of ice, and my hands are frozen, and it's hard to move. And it's this beautiful sky, and we're not panicked, but we know the situation is now dire. And now it's like it is death.
Man, when things are gonna go wrong, they just keep going wrong, right from the get-go. Like one thing after another. Like, oh my God.
Yep, that's what happened. And all because I made a bravado decision of this little tiny hammer. I mean, I could trace all my decision making all the way back, I suppose, to when I was first able to make decisions. But I definitely. So anyway, we were there, and hypothermia continued to advance, and what happens next is your body gets hot. My body got hot, and I felt to me, the experience of it was all of the blood rushing from all of my extremities into my essentials, my heart, my lungs, my brain. And I, like a lot of people in this situation, I started to take off my clothes. I unzipped my coat. I couldn't get my sweater off because I don't know why I didn't try to get my sweater off, but I didn't. I unzipped my coat, and Tim got angry at me. What are you doing? You know better than this. Put your coat back up. I'm like, I don't really care. I'm sweating. I'm hot. I didn't care. I was making irrational choices. And so I unzipped my coat, which accelerated my cold, kind of made it closer. And I kept pulling on the rope. And then the curtain began to drop on me. And that's how I think about how I fell asleep. I began to fall, second to last stage, falling asleep. The darkness would just descend like a curtain on a stage, a black curtain, slam, and I'd be asleep. And I would collapse, and I'd land on the rock and smack my helmeted head and pull myself back up because I just whacked myself and I shocked myself awake and stand back up again. But it was a losing of consciousness. The sleep was not a snuggly in, count the sheep. It was bang, like a closing door, slam shut. And I stood up this last time. This happened a bunch of times. I don't know, 2, 3, 5. I have no idea. So I stand up this last time. And now that I stand up, I've got this big, huge black circle around me. I can see my peripheral vision. You stick your arms out to the side and you pull your fingers forward, and you can, see your fingertips at this certain stage. From that point around me, there's this big circle, and everything beyond that is just black. And then this big black circle begins to close really rapidly. Black just advances down from the top and from the sides and all the angles. Just a circle of black gets smaller and smaller. And as it got smaller and smaller and smaller, I just get more and more tunnel vision, which is what happens when you die of hypothermia, which I didn't know at the time. I was like, what the heck is this? And I'd read about it, but never seen it. So I looked around and I watched this thing, and I was confused. I didn't understand what was going on. And then to black, only when it went to black this time, instead of the loss of consciousness like the curtain fall, this was an awareness. So it goes to black, and now I'm like, oh, why am I still awake? Why don't my feet hurt anymore? I'm not cold. I did not understand what was going on. And then the darkness became a thing. It expanded. It became this infinite distance, galaxies and galaxies and galaxies deep of just darkness. And way far at galaxies and galaxies away, a pinprick of light appeared. And this pinprick of light came rushing toward me and expanded as it came, faster than the speed of light. And it communicated to me intelligence and power, and it spoke to me without language. All of this was like a download of information. It wasn't discourse. It was whammo, this is what's going on. And it was saying, I'm taking you. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I don't know what's going on here, but you're not taking me. And so I pull down inside, and I find my willpower, and I put up my shield to protect myself, my mental shield. You're not taking me. And it just reached inside me, or reached to me and took me. And then I lost all my willpower. I lost all my capacity for making anything happen. And I was inside of it. And it was this immense orb of light, only it was consciousness itself. It was an angelic form. It was in two places at once. It was power beyond power, but it was also somehow limited in a way that it came to collect me. And inside of it, I had a body of sort of shaped like a human, I guess, to describe it, but it had no substance, no physicality to it. It was made of a shape of light, of energy, but not matter, not material. So I'm inside this thing, and I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing through it into the darkness, and it's communicating to me this entire time. Comfort and intelligence, like all intelligence and all knowledge and all comfort and love and it's okay, you're coming with me, it's all right. And I had this exterior perspective as well. So I'm inside of this thing, and I can see through my soul, my spirit eyes. I don't know how to describe it. But I had this outside perspective where I had no form, but I could see myself in this entity as inside of this light, and I was kind of paralleling it on this path, and just like, whoa, I could see myself inside there. So I had these two perspectives. Wow. And then we travel all the way back to its original pinprick of light location, and the same trajectory. And I don't really know how this worked. I don't know whether it unfolded itself, or whether I popped out of it, or whether the darkness that I was in absorbed. I'm not really sure what happened. The next thing I knew is that this entity was greater size than the universe itself. It was infinity itself, and I was in a place of no thingness, nothing. There was nothing here. There was only darkness, and this darkness I could see into the darkness almost to infinity, because I was an orb of energetic light. I was a consciousness unto myself, in contentment, in peace, in recollection of my own original self. This is who I am, and I am at ease in this infinite darkness that is no thing at all, and I am no thing. I am a consciousness where I know that I can see, like I have some perception of sight, but I know that my sight is myself. There's no separation between my self-awareness and my sight. And my brain wasn't in the way of my thinking. So I no longer had this slow machine in the way of the processing of information that was myself. The processing of information was also myself. There was no separation in me at all.
Wow, when you said no thing, I got goosebumps and chills, like every hair on my body stood up. Because I've got a huge fascination with the zero dimension, no thing, not really quite know how to express it, but it's huge interest. And when you said that, I got tingles from head to toe, and I'm still trying to shake it off. Yeah, please, Peter, go on. This is incredible.
Sure. So this darkness, this no thingness, And when I say no thing, I mean like, yes, zero time. I'm in the center of time, all time. I'm in all time. I'm in no time. I'm in forward time and backward time and upside down and inverted time. And there is only this now moment and all this other to it too. But none of it had any sort of physical substance whatsoever. There were no photons or electrons or quarks or, you know, the Higgs boson. There was nothing like that. There was everything that I say, and this swings around to what we were talking about in the very beginning, is in language. And all the language that I went to divinity school. My life changed after this. I didn't go to architecture school and for graduate work. I went to divinity school to study mysticism, which they don't really teach at Yale, but long story, I can tell you some other time, I was able to do it. And so languaging this thing that is unlanguageable has been the problem of mystical experiencers and now near-death experiencers, which is a type of mystical experience, as are many other things. The language is the problem. How do you speak about the unspeakable? How do you put into words the ineffable? And so everything that I say is in simile or metaphor or myth or symbol or allegory. That's how I talk about this. And that's what all the mystics do throughout the history of the world. If you know, this is true. It's true for Lao Tzu. It's true for Rumi. It's true for Chuang Tzu. It's true for everybody. It's true for Jesus. It's true for everybody. Because in this place of no beingness, there is no language, because you have no brain, because you are no thing. And so anyway, I am a no thing, but I am also know myself. I know myself as my original true self, and I know that this is where I'm from. I am home, as Kathy said. I am home. And I didn't know that I hadn't been home. And now I know that I hadn't been home, and I am home. And then this light appears. And this light is gigantic. It's not anywhere as big as infinity, but compared to me, it's enormous, and I am enormous. I am my original self as a light being is so much bigger than my teeny tiny little confinement here in this world inside my physical form. And so I am enormous, but this light was, well, so much bigger than me. And it was like a waterfall flow full of sparkles of stars, like the stars that I had seen that night, of all these different colors and sizes. Every color, I had never seen such stars in my life. I had never seen so many different colors, and there were more colors in this and more stars. And it was this flow that was flowing, but it was also white light. It was also brighter than white light. It was these two things at once. It was this flow and this depth and these colors and this solid color of light itself. And I could see the surface of it, and it was translucent and it was transparent. So I had this like triple deck vision inside of it, and it was calling to me. It was calling to me and calling to me in the most seductive way. It was calling my name, my soul name, like showing me who I was and am and my original self, how I was made. And as I had this compulsion to go to this beauty. And then when I touched this beauty with my orb self, it flowed inside me and surrounded me and infilled me. And then all these things happened at once. And I'm going to take a drink of water.
Yeah. Please do. This is incredible.
So I'm infilled by this light that is calling my name and naming myself, and I see myself as who I am, and I know that I am known. I know that as my human form, that I had been completely known. I understood that the divine had lived inside of me, that I am that self. But that somehow in this state, in my heavenly self, I am still less than itself. I am made from it. I am of it. I am part of it. I am a portion of it, and the same as it. But I am limited, even in my consciousness self. I am not infinity itself. Although I see the origin of myself as being like superpositioned. a photon that was separate from a septillion photons that make up this field of energy that is the divine self. And I am both this inside this divine energy field, and I am somehow limited, and it is unlimited, and I am somehow limited, but I'm also of it and the same as it. And I can't explain how this works.
Yeah, I totally hear you there, brother, because
I
it's
have to
like,
say, wahoo!
yeah, it's like, it's like your consciousness has this barrier, right, to where there's this fine line, and you can come up to it, but you can't go past it, but you are of it, right? And it's yeah, I've explored that idea in so many occasions, and in fact I was talking to Kathy about that very thing yesterday. That's why I jumped on here, and it's like, oh wow, Peter.
Well,
There you go, serendipity.
that's why I love what he's saying, because he's able to explain this vessel can only hold or interpret so much of that.
Yeah,
And the ones that have had an experience of it may hold more, or an understanding and a way to present it in 3D. But all of us have it.
yeah,
All
yeah,
of us came
absolutely.
from that origin.
Yeah, carry on, Peter. I'm loving
Yeah,
this. This is
I didn't want to
resonating.
interrupt, but it's like, Yahoo! Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so resonating with this. This is good stuff.
Yeah.
Serendipity. So this flows into me, and it shows me my human self, my recent human life, and I go through a hell of my own making. I constructed it myself, and I like to use A Christmas Carol and Charles Dickens and not Bob Marley, Jacob Marley. I forged these chains in my life, link by link. If you remember seeing that on TV or reading the book, I caused, as a human being, because I was a human being, I caused pain in the world, and I experienced all the pain that I gave away in the world that I intentionally and unintentionally caused in the world. And I experienced it from my own point of view, all of my reasoning to cause that pain, or emotional status to cause that pain, or some sequence I experienced from the interior of every single person that I have ever heard. I experienced their psychology and their emotional response and their chemical response to it. You know, the anger or the rush of bad feeling, and from their interior point of view, simultaneous to every single event that I caused. And so there was this sequence of shame building inside of me, through pain causing, where I saw myself as a human form, as being a broken form of my higher self, a lesser limited form of my higher self. And I experienced all this pain that I gave away, all my karma that I created. I was accrued to me, and it was attached to me. But simultaneous to all of this, I judged myself. I judged myself because the divine was also visible to me, and I could see I could still see infinity, to the edge, to the beginning of infinity. I could see to the beginning of unlimitedness, and to the beginning of purity. It showed its pure self to me, and in seeing its pure self, I saw my less than self as a mortal being, as less than the divine self, encased in flesh, and that as a human being, as a natural result of being a human being, I caused pain in the world, which had this spiritual consequence for me. But also all these other things were happening. I saw also all of humanity, this great radical equality of brokenness of all of humanity, because of the purity, capital P, and the impurity of us, and the unlimited nature with a capital U, and the limited nature of material life. And that the whole structure of the universe is built on this thing that in order to exist has to have brokenness in it. If it was the purity of the light that I saw, that I knew was my original self, that it wouldn't be this universe. It couldn't, can't, wouldn't. It would be something other. It'd be heaven. And so for this universe exists because of this innate darkness, this innate lessening, this innate brokenness of the divine self, where black holes consume star systems and galaxies, and amoebas and diseases kill human beings. Everything consumes something else and then just transformed physically into something else. The whole thing is built on this sort of inward reuse, reduce, not reduce, but reuse and recycle system. But because I'm a human being, it wasn't my fault that I caused pain. This is part of the structure of the divine creation. I'm a human being, I cause pain. But I also gathered love simultaneous to all of this. I saw and understood that all of the love I had given away in my life, and all the love that had been given to me, was this lens through which I could hear the voice of the divine saying to me, I know you, I've always known you. I show you yourself. I show you your original self. I show you the eons of the length of the life of your soul self, of your higher self, of your higher consciousness. I show you your other lives. I show you into these other lives. I show you the strength and the size of your original self. I love you as you are as a human. I've always loved you as a creation of mine, as an aspect of me. I love myself. I love my own light of which you are made. And I love you in your human form because of your original self. And I knew you and understood you and loved you as you did all of these things through your life, which I experienced as these other people. As you caused them pain, you caused pain to me, but I love them and I love you, and just hear my love, hear my welcome. And so I judged myself, but when my heart turned through this lens and could listen to this forever offer of forgiveness, always not forgiving me for being a human being, but loving me because I was also light. And when I listened, my whole self turned toward it. And when I turned toward it, all of my pain went away, all of my suffering, I became healed and whole, and all of my life was gone. There was no suffering in me at all, only this infilling, this flooding. Like I had been a preventer. My attachment to my suffering was stopping me from having this experience of this divine infill. And the only thing that was in my own way was myself. And all I needed to do was to open myself to the divine light that was presented to me, to be infilled with it and expanded like a huge balloon. I got blown up and bigger and bigger and bigger with this flood of love, beauty, bliss, healing, wholeness, understanding, knowledge, adoration, paradise, heaven, orgasm. The list goes on and on. Joy, all these things as facets of the divine light and unity that filled me and showed me itself. And then as I expanded, then I contracted. And when I contracted, I said to the divine, am I dead? Is this heaven? And the voice said, you're dead. This is heaven. This has come home to us now. It's time for you to come. And I said, but enough of me. I had enough, somehow had more humanness back to me. I was like looking back at my life thinking, but what about my parents? See, my sister had vanished when I was 14. She'd run away from home and caused a deep brokenness, came back when I was 18, high school senior, with a baby in tow. And then she ran away again and totally shattered my family into 1,000 broken emotional pieces and vanished. My mom was the most broken of us all. So that's the reason I wasn't in Montana. I was in Montana rather in the first place, not in Boston. Going back, I should say I was in British Columbia and Alberta when this happened, but I was out west so as not to be in Boston. And I remembered my parents. So when I was on the cliff, as I was this peace had come over me when I finally accepted that I was going to die. And instead of being panicked, I just was like, okay, this is before sleep came. I was like, all right, I'm going to die. And I looked up at the stars, and this peace kind of filled in me. And I was thinking about my parents, and I was thinking about how the loss of my sister, and that they're going to lose me, and that was going to totally destroy them. But there was nothing to be done for it. I could not rescue myself. I knew I was going to die. And so when I was dead in this space, that emotional experience was still fresh enough. I don't know how it came to me, but there it was. And there it was. And I said, but my parents, they're already so deeply in suffering. You know, if I go with you into this depth of this beauty, then they're going to suffer. And when I telecommunicated that non-linguistically, I was swept across the body of the divine self. Heaven is not this separate place. It is, at least in my experience. In my experience, heaven was the divine body. The somehow God, the beloved, the divine being, the Atman, the Brahman, the cosmic consciousness became this sort of personified presence to me, immensely bigger than me, so much more powerful than me, but somehow reduced itself to speak to me. So it swept me, this reduction of itself swept me through the body of itself, this infinite nothingness to the edge of nothingness where somethingness begins. And this somethingness was the universe, our universe, and it pushed my cosmic self, my orb of self, sort of outside of this, enough of it that I could see into this universe while the majority of me was still inside the divine self. I then could see our entire universe, like in this huge flash. I could see our entire universe, all of the galaxies, all of the planets, all of the star systems, everything. I could see it all, and I could see its origin. I could see its origin, and I could see these multiverses. I could see universe before universe before universe, universe atop of universe atop of universe, and universe before that universe, and universe before that universe, and all these multiple universes going way far back in time out of time, and all of this smaller than infinity. And this infinity was creating all of these universes, time after time after time, layer after layer after layer, dimension after dimension after dimension, and right into its physicality, and permeating all of it with the presence of itself, and saying, I am infinity, and I am love itself. I am the beloved, and pouring out all of these universes, all of this limitations from the ultimate unlimited, and speaking it into being, breathing it through love into being, and permeating it with this love. Forever all is well. I am the originator. All is well. All has been well because of this infinite love that I am, through which I create all these things that I am. And all of that love, that multiverse of love, was focused at me personally, that I was the most beloved in all that had ever been created. But there was also this radical equality of belovedness. And as I experienced it, it was saying to me, because of my love, all is well, has been well, and will be well, because I am infinite love itself. It brought my focus to earth. And inside of earth was like this hologram, and on it was every living human being. This was actual reality that I was seeing from above. And I could see every living human being in one eyeful. I could see what they were doing. I could hear them. I could sense them. I saw them and understood them. And they were all doing everything. There's wars and babies being made and people dying and ships at sea and people baking bread, everything, all these things going on. I could see it all at once. And I could see their core of their being. I could see the same original self in them. This electron, this photon that I was, I could see this golden photon inside of every human being, which was, is, and always will be divine perfection and light. Always well, always was, always will be. But it was also, earth was covered by this foam, this layer of thickness through which nobody could see this the way that I could. It was all blocked and blind. No one could see this, but I could see their originalness. I could see their beauty, and I could see how they were beloved, the same love as me. I'm particularly beloved, but so particularly is everyone else, the most beloved. And then I saw my parents' faces, and my parents' faces were an accumulation of all of their suffering throughout their entire life, ever since my sister left the first time, and everything in between, all the tears and all the sorrow and all the brokenness and all the anger and all the frustration. And I could see the accumulation of their suffering. And then I saw 2 lives for them each. I saw their lives without me and the increase of their suffering. And I saw their lives were I to go back and still suffering, but less suffering. But what mattered most was how they died, was in the end of their lives in both cases, me there and me not there. It ended in the same way. It ended in this divine golden light of their own interior well-being, always loved, always beloved, no more pain, no more suffering. And because I was in timelessness, and the voice is still speaking to me, it's telling me all these things, showing me all these things. The showing is the telling. And as it's showing me, it's telling me that because of the divine love, in a moment of timelessness, their lives will end and they will be in wellness with a capital W as well. And all will end as well for them in beauty and love as it does for me. And so why don't you stay? And I couldn't take my eyes off of their suffering. And I said, if I go back to my life, can I come back here to this divine self? That my view of heaven receded. And then I was back inside the body of the divine self. And I was having this sort of direct conversation without language to the entire body of the being, who was also somehow perfectly present to me. But I couldn't see it other than the entire being itself. And I said, if I go back to my life, can I come back here into you, into this heaven, into this place of bliss and expanded understanding, this knowledge of myself and of you, this perfect paradise? And the voice said, yes, you can come back here. I said, well, then I choose to live my life. And it said, you won't live your life. And poof, shot me out. And as I went, it carried me, it went with me, and I became denser and denser and thicker inside of it. And in front of me, there was this huge wall of doorways. And all the doors are open, and they're all tunnels inside them. And all these tunnels are lives I could live. They're all mine. They all aim right to my physicality that I left behind on the mountain, but they're all lives to live. And they're all in the middle of all of it. There's this bright, brilliant white light that is the divine self, that is what is also carrying me. And because of its intensity, there's light that bleeds into all these doorways in a decreasing fashion until not almost quite darkness at the outer edge. And there were millions of doors. And the voice in this concentric circles, maybe even I'll just leave it at that, concentric circles of doorways. And the voice is speaking to me, choose. And as it says, choose to me, it says, choose me, choose the light. And I look at the light and I see what it is. And I think to myself, I want some autonomy. I want some self. And so in that moment of that choice, my doorway was outside of the purity of the light, still in this radiant of the light, but not in the purity of it. And I entered this doorway. And as I entered this doorway, I saw all these probabilities. All the doorways were probabilities of my life, the life I could live. And all of these tunnels, they all had doorways within them. And all the doorways led to all these other tunnels. And so there was, and every choice I would make would create a new doorway that would lead me either toward the light or on my path or away from the light. And as I went down this tunnel being carried, I got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and crushed and crushed and crushed and crushed till I was this tiny, tiny little thing under immense pressure. It felt like to me in the grip of the hand of God, like not, oh, he's in the hand of God. No, like in the muscled grip of the tight crushing, and then screwed back into myself. And my instant experience of the world was suffering. I was back in this physical form. I had forgotten all suffering completely. And I didn't understand what had just happened to me. I knew that I was this other thing. I knew that this was done to me. I knew that I had been crushed. I knew that I had been light. I knew that I was not what I was doing in this prison. I was trapped inside this thing. And as I was trapped inside this thing, it was all full of pain. Everything, the first thing that came back for me was physical pain. And so I'm just pain everywhere. And then my brain kind of comes back online more, and I hear sound, and I hear this sound, and I hear this sound, and then it resolves itself into a voice. And I hear this voice, and don't die, don't die, don't die. And I open my eyes and I look up, and there's Tim. And he's like, oh my God, your eyes are open. You were dead. You were going to die. You die. I was going to die. And he's screaming and he's crying and he's pulling me up. And he's like, oh my God, you were just lying there and I couldn't save you and all this stuff. And I had no idea what was going on. I didn't understand who I was or where I was or what was going on or who he was. And then slowly all of it starts to come back. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy's Tim. And I'm a human being and I'm on this ice. And now it's all making sense. And he's like, oh my God, you were dead. And we had this little conversation. And then after a period of time, everybody's calmed down again. He's overjoyed that I'm still there because my dying meant his dying for sure. And he was terrified. He was an atheist and he was terrified of death. And I was too before this happened. I wasn't an atheist, but I was terrified of death. And then I'm standing there and he says, pull the rope. And I pull the rope and the rope comes free and we descend. And because the car's right across the street, we get out the tent. We self-treat for hypothermia. Because he's a very wealthy kid. His family was very wealthy. Had a chimney and a vent. The most expensive winter tent with the most expensive stove. We fired up the stove inside. We got inside our sleeping bags. We heated up water slowly, cool water, warmer water, hot water, brought our body temperatures back up inside our sleeping bags. And then we went into the car, fired up the heater and heated up our bodies. And after sunrise, some point, we were warm enough and able to be mobile enough to load the car and get out of there. And as we loaded the car, the warden showed up and asked if we were the boys who had been on the mountain that night. And yes, sir, we were. And he said, I came to see if I had to order the helicopter to collect your bodies. I'm really glad I don't have to do that. You take care, boys. And that was it. And then I came back. I was a different person. You asked me how I changed. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to stop here because I've been talking for freaking hours. And you guys haven't had a chance to say anything. So I'm going to stop here.
This was the most in-depth NDE experience I've ever heard in my life, and I've done several series now of this NDE, and I've spoken to a lot of people on NDE, and I would say that this is like the most in-depth description of what happened that I've ever heard. Right? That's
why I went to school. Omar, that's what I came back the second morning after this. So I came back an alien in this body. I felt like I'm an alien. This world I'm an alien in another world. Okay, everybody, I look like Peter and I sound like Peter, but I am not Peter anymore. Yep. I am an entirely different person. I'm like a walk-in, but it's my soul that comes back. But now, because of who I saw myself. Terrible things happened the next night. We nearly hit a car head on because Tim fell asleep at the wheel. I woke him up and we missed it. And then we sped through this town and we get arrested by the Mounties because we're Americans and they lock us up till we pay the fine. And then we're exhausted and Tim's an atheist. I can't talk to him about this. Mm-hmm. So then we're driving down the highway and we stop in Calgary to get a pizza somewhere, and it's all neon and fiber and formica and plastic, and I'm like totally freaked out by this. I'm like, oh my God, this is Earth, and I have to eat. I have to like, we got pizza, and I had to like,
yeah.
So I'm in this thing that is alien to me, and then we get back in the car and we drive further, and I fall asleep again, and I wake up and Tim's on the wrong side of the road, or so it looks to me again. And I jerk the wheel because he won't get over the other side of the road. And instead I steer us into eventually the rear wheels head on of a semi-trailer truck and just blow the car apart. And neither of us are hurt, but the car's destroyed. And
Wow.
the flatbed ended up breaking the windshield, like right there. And, you know, we're bruised. And Tim is freaked out. The dad had given this like a birthday gift, this brand new car, and don't let anybody drive it, which is why I wasn't doing any of the driving, why he's doing all the driving. And I still wrecked his car. So Mounties, we spend the night. We sleep on the floor of a hotel. And we have enough money left over stashed in our boots that Tim takes a bus back to Bozeman because there's a bus there. And so he gets the first bus out, and we walk over in the morning. He takes all the big equipment, all the skis. I take the smaller stuff. I get the carabiners and the rope and some of the axes. And I get the things that I can carry. He's got the things he can carry. Off he goes, and he's not talking to me. He's super pissed off at me. And because the emotion of the day before too. I mean, all these terrible things that happen. You reach your point. And so I'm standing by the side of the road with my Bozeman. I'd been a hitchhiker. I'd already hitchhiked lots of places in my life. So I've been a hitchhiker since I was 14. And so I'm standing out on the side of the road with my sign. It says Bozeman, Montana, and it's this beautiful sunrise in this really beautiful place. It's like southern British Columbia, southern Alberta. We came on through Alberta. Southern Alberta, it's just gorgeous, and this beautiful clouds, and the sun's up, and it's ugly to me. It's like this two-dimensional flat surface, like black and white to me. I can see the divine light inside of everything. I can see it inside myself. It's just trapped. Everything is trapped. The light is like trapped in everything. And inside of me, there's this roaring sound of my name being called, my soul name, which is unpronounceable to me. And it's calling me to speak. And I'm like, speak. I don't even know what happened to me. I don't even know where I am or who you are anymore. I'm completely lost. And plus you want me to say this about something that I can't say to myself. I can't even define what you are. This thing inside me that's living and roaring like a waterfall inside me. It's the loudest thing there is. And so I decided that I was gonna button my lip and not say a word ever about it until I was ready to, till I was, I think, damn well ready to. And I changed the course of my life. I had been an English major as an undergrad. Instead of going to architecture grad school to join the family firm, my dad was a successful architect. And I've been at the drafting board since I was a kid. Gone through college, working pounding nails, working in construction so that I could learn how to build things from the inside out. My sister was in graduate school for architecture. It's like this family thing. And I decided that I wasn't ever going to say a word, but I felt like my mission had changed. I had a mission. And so eventually I went to divinity school to study language. English is literature is a language study. And I went to study mysticism. I went to study the language of the mystics. And so part of my purpose in all of this was to be able to tell my story, because I wanted to be, because it's not the story itself that matters most to me. It's the opportunity to try to bring a weaving of light inside the words in between them and engage people with the possibility of who they are inside themselves through this resident energy that we also talked about, that is the divine presence inside of all things. And the word for that is pantheism, the divine inside of all there is. And more than that. So my whole life has been about languaging the unlanguageable. And I want to say this too. I am most aware that to attach to language is a fatal mistake in spirituality. To think that the words mean what they say, because they don't, they can't. They can approximate and they can bring toward, but the only way to experience it is to experience it. And it's all subjective. It's all inside of you. It can be shared in community. I mean, I'm assuming you're feeling what I'm feeling now because I can feel it now. And when I can feel it now, I know others feel it now too. And there's this relationship through the quanta. So anyway,
Fantastic. Thank you.
Where did Omar go?
I don't know. I assume you wanted me to talk to you.
Oh, cool. That's great.
Well, I'd love, Omar, do you want to ask a couple more questions, or do you want me to show the ions?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Peter has like such a in-depthness to this that this can never be covered in just like a single sitting. So I'd love to bring Peter back, a number of times to
Sure.
engage him on this, because I'm sitting here writing, so many notes, and a lot of things that you've said have really resonated with me. But on the other side, it raised a lot of questions for me as well, right? That I'd like to dig deeper into. But we're like over an hour and a half now.
Yeah,
And
sorry about
so I
that.
think no, it's all good,
No,
but I
we're
like it.
excited.
I want to try to bring you back like ASAP, like right after the series is over. I'm thinking like next week, bring you back and then
I've
continue
got
the
IANS next week.
well
So
after.
after that, it'd have to be
Yeah,
it
yeah,
would have to be in 2 weeks if that's possible, because
yeah, in September.
yeah, that'd be great. I'd love
Yeah,
that.
I would love that. 'Cause I'd like to carry this forward because, just the no thing in itself is, it really intrigues me. And I've done a presentation on that, and I've been investigating it for a long time. And, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, and just that resident energy that you're talking about as well. Like, and then the barrier, it's just so much that you said that I want to dig into, right? But running out of time, hour and a half. I'd like, Kathy sent me a message. She's like, how long do you want to go for? I was like, as long as we can, but maybe we should cut it at an hour and a half.
Yeah, sorry about that. I tried this. I was trying to talk as fast as I could.
No, I'd love it. I absolutely love it, and I'm looking forward to our next meeting, because next one is, it's going to be something else. Because, like I said, I've got tons and tons of questions, and one thing that really intrigues me is that a lot of NDE experiencers, they say that when they're in that moment of, in that very moment when it's happening and their spirit is lifting out of their body, that they can actually see their body. Right, but you didn't seem to have that experience. It was just like boom, from here to
There.
consciousness, to that connection. And I find that really, really cool, because it shows me that not every experience is the same. Maybe some people share some aspects in their experiences, but it's mostly tailor-made for the individual, right? And that's what I'd like to get into with you the next time, because that's super cool.
Yeah, the other thing is the 360 vision. Like, well, when Peter was saying that, I was reliving. I guess I have not had a near-death experience, but I was reliving and could relate to so much of it. For say transformative experience, and I didn't do it with drugs. I mean, a lot of people are doing ayahuasca and plant medicine now, and even in the 60s and 70s, people were experimenting with LSD and stuff. This isn't exactly the same. It isn't. It isn't.
It's like acid on steroids.
It is like that on steroids. We could talk about that too at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can't talk about that, but because I don't have that experience.
Sorry, Kathy. For myself, I had an experience in my mid-20s. I was hitchhiking as well, and I made a critical mistake, and I ended up getting wet. And I underestimated on how quickly the sun goes down in the mountains, and how fast it gets dark, and how quickly it becomes cold, especially around in September, when we're going into autumn and high mountains, and it gets cold quickly and very fast. Anyways, I had something similar to where I almost froze to death, and there was this manifestation almost that took place, because I was standing on a highway, and all my clothes were wet, and my fingers were like frozen. I couldn't light a cigarette, and but I still had my faculties together, and I was making plans on what am I going to do. I'm in the middle of this highway at this gas station. There's no one around. I'm wet. I'm cold, and I have no shelter. And I'm looking around, standing on the highway on both sides, seeing if I can spot a car coming that I can flag down to get help. And nothing was happening. I didn't see anything on my left nor on my right. behind me was this Husky gas station with a bunch of pallets on the side, and I thought maybe I'll make a fire and just stay warm if worst case scenario. And I was standing there, and just all of a sudden, this big red truck manifested, came out of nowhere, came up from behind me, and then pulled over across the highway. And I thought it was for me, and so I went running up to it and opened the door. But I startled the people that were inside, and I realized they didn't stop for me, because what had happened is that when they turned the truck, a bottle had fell, baby's bottle had fell. So the two grandparents, the Aboriginal grandparents that were driving the truck, the grandfather, he stopped the truck so that his wife can reach down and grab the bottle. And then that's when I opened up the door and startled them. And they saw the shape that I was in. Obviously, I was in pretty bad shape. So they pulled me into the truck and stripped me down and turned on the heat and began to warm me up. And next morning, I woke up in a town like 1,500 kilometers away from where I originally started, and it was profound. And they told me they were on their way to a reserve to give the grandbaby back to their daughter, and then they were going to go back to Alberta. But then and I've thought about that moment, that experience for a long time now, because my recollection is quite acute for that night, and I knew exactly what was going on, and I knew what was happening leading up to that moment, and I was quite aware of what was happening. And this truck, it just suddenly came out of nowhere, and like I said, it came from behind me. And there was a parking lot, and there's an entry and an exit to the parking lot, and this parking lot's not very big, right? And then this truck was pretty loud. It would be like like an F-250 or so, an F-350, pretty loud diesel truck. And, so you can hear it coming down the road anyhow, but, there was no sound, no nothing. And it just came out from behind me. And like I said, I was standing there looking left or right to see if I can spot anyone. And as I was doing that, this had happened. And, and then when I passed out in the truck, everything just went totally black for me. I don't have any recollection, any memory, any contact of any sort. It was just like going to sleep and waking up the next morning as normal. So, I don't see that I would have an NDE experience there, but, something paranormal happened that night, to where, these people manifested out of nothing, and, this truck manifested out of nothing, just at the precise moment when when I needed the help. And then when I look back, I remember when I came into this parking lot, there were these two guys that were working on a brown Firebird. They had their hood up and they were doing something under the hood, and my fingers were so cold that I couldn't take smoke out of my pack, nor I could light it. So I went up to them and I asked them to pull a smoke out for me, and they were looking at me like, wow, bro, you're in like some pretty rough shape. And so anyways, they gave me a smoke, put it in my mouth, lit it for me. So I'm standing there, and when you're saying chattering teeth, I know exactly what that is. And my hands were shaking, and my fingers were stiff, and I was earlier on in the day I'd been rained on, right? And it was like one of those rains where you're walking down the highway, the sun's shining, and suddenly this cloud comes over you, it rains, and it loosens up on you, you get wet, and that's it, right? And I was on a highway, so there was nowhere for me to dry up, change, or anything like that. But anyways, after this truck had just come out of nowhere, and when I went running up to the truck, as I was looking at that truck, I could see the parking lot behind me, and that brown Camaro or that Firebird was not there anymore, nor the two people that were working on that Camaro. It's like suddenly they were gone, and this truck was there that saved my life pretty much. And so I've been trying to figure out what happened that night for quite a long time. That's why I have this deep interest in this NDE series, or this NDE topic in general, because I don't think I had that, but I feel that it was something close to that there was some sort of an intervention that saved my my life, my container.
Well, there are many kinds of mystical experiences, and NDE is just one type of mystical experience.
Mm-hmm. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. There was this fellow by the name of William James, who was a professor at Harvard Divinity School, Harvard University, back at the turn of last century. Wrote a book called Varieties of Religious Experience. He was maybe the greatest psychologist mind ever. Philosophic mind, I think I meant to say. And in any case, in the Varieties of Religious Experience, in one of his chapters, he gives 4 characteristics for mystical experience, summarized. They're passive. They happen to you. You don't make them happen. They're noetic. They give an experience to your soul, and they're ineffable, and you can't say this experience. And they are time limited. They have a beginning and an end. So a mystical experience is by his definition of it, which I think NDE fits inside of, and lots of other kinds do. There's a circumstance that happens to you that you didn't cause to happen. So you're a passive receiver and has a beginning and an end. And then there's a divine experience. And the one I like to use a lot is a visitation from the dead, after death communication, because so many people who are grieving have this happen to them. A loved one comes back in a dream or in a wake state, either way. And there's a noetic knowledge that's past, non-linguistic, love, healing, wellness, forgiveness, acceptance, whatever the form of love is communicated. And then the experience ends, it's time limited. And then this person has this knowledge inside their heart that their dead loved one is not dead. And they might not know that about anybody else or themselves, but they can't not know this. But if they say it, ineffable, Uncle Joe came to visit me and he told me that he's great. It sounds like it doesn't at all resonate with what they experienced. Mm-hmm. And so then their grief changes, and this is an important part of it. Their grief changes, and they are now a different person. They have a different experience of their life of mourning, because even though they miss this person with all their heart, soul, and life, they know that this person is not dead. And so that's a life changer. So that's one type of mystical experience among many different kinds.
Sweet. Thank you, Peter, for that. I'm going to dig deeper into your mind about that during our next meeting. Let's quickly do a awareness for the IONS conference coming up on August 31st to September the 4th. Here, Kathy, I'll toss this. I'll let you do it. Where'd it go?
We lost it. We both did it. Anyway, I'll put it back up again. Okay.
Okay, and I'll toss it up.
That's funny. Quick on the draw.
There we go. Here, I'll add that to the stream. There it is.
Yes. So Peter is one of the MCs, or is the major MC for this event, which starts August 31st and goes to September 4th in Salt Lake City. It's an annual event for the IONS nonprofit association that has been in existence for 40 years. And there's going to be at least 350 people in attendance. We're breaking records every day because we have it online as well as in person. So this may be our biggest conference. And as we have spoken before, the experience of being with this many open-minded, open-hearted people is quite profound. So, Peter, do you want to say anything about it?
Yeah. So one of the things that the first IONS conference that I went to, I experienced what we talked about before. It was like walking into this big, huge bubble of light. It was, and then because of, it's not only this bubble of light, it's everybody there gets magnified. So there's this residual, your light shines in me and my light shines in you, and now we're both twice as bright, but that's multiplied by as many people as they're there. And so I could feel people coming at me from 5 feet away, like all the time. They're just like my fields got larger when I was there. And but here's the thing that I really like about IONS is that it's science-based. And despite everything that I just said about my mystical life, and there's a ton more, I actually have a very scientific mind. I'm extraordinarily interested in, let me put it this way. I took American Scientific for 10 years and I read it. So just put it that way. So I'm super thrilled that there are scientists, especially skeptical scientists at universities, who are researching this phenomena because it is huge. You know, one of the scientists estimates 10 to 20 million in the United States alone, times all of the other countries. As the science begins to understand what this phenomena is, it makes it more approachable by lots more people. It's not crazy anymore. I kept my mouth shut for 20 years and not telling nobody because I didn't want to be Kooky Pete, you know. He's off the
Right.
deep end.
Well, this was perfect timing. Right now, the world's waking up. We're looking for answers of how we go from this monkey existence to a much more peaceful, loving world. And so, all these people explaining their mystical experiences gives us a much better, much more hopeful future, and much more. There's more assets to rely upon to create this new future.
Mm-hmm.
And the time is now.
Yep. That's what we came here for.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
right. And time's taken away, guys. So it's time to raise your awareness, time to see, dream, and wake up as many people as you possibly can. I hate to say, go knock on doors and start waking people up, because then that gives us some bad rep. But we can do it online, right? We can use all these mediums and resources that we have to raise awareness, simply by sharing videos like this, or taking a message from a video like this and putting it on your timeline, and raise an eyebrow on your timeline, because that's what really causes people to think. And that's seed dreaming. So plant a seed wherever you go, and and be in love with yourselves, because that's the main thing. Is when you're in love with yourself, then you're in love with the world. And when you're in love with the world, then all you're going to do is just love, love, love. And that's what's really it's all about. We're not, we don't want to vibrate in fear anymore, because that's where we've been. And, we don't like it. And because we don't like it, we don't want to repeat it. And, learn from our mistakes and carry forward, this container. It has a lot of potential and a lot of abilities and a lot of things that we can do with it. But we just have to believe in ourselves and believe in the love that exists within ourselves. So, that's my message for the day. And thank you very much, Peter. I, appreciate you and, your insight into the NDE. And I'm so looking forward to engaging with you in a couple of weeks to, learn more about this, because, I'm really, really intrigued. And I saw you on Kathy's show a number of times, and I wanted to have you on the show, so I'm so glad that you came on and gave us this download. So looking forward to reviving this conversation in a couple of weeks, and also on Saturday you're going to be part of the panel. So that's going to be a great discussion as well. So Kathy, any final words?
Just total gratitude for this whole opportunity. And Omar, thank you for hosting this. And please, everyone that's listening, please follow Peter on peterpanagore.love. How appropriate is that URL? And and also he has a wonderful YouTube channel. And let your mind and your imagination expand with all this. That's what I would request. We're much more powerful than we know.
That's right. They've told us that we have no power. So because they've told us that we have no power, we think we have no power. So we have no power. But, if we tell ourselves that we do have power, that we are powerful and we're all infinite, then, suddenly a bunch of options open up for us. Any final words from you, Peter, before we end our stream this evening?
Sure. My YouTube channel is my name, Peter Panagore, but the message really is love. It's your treasure. It's your treasure in life. It's your treasure at home. It's your treasure when you die. That's it. Love your neighbor.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And thank you very much to everyone who came out and watched this today, like the video shared here on Watchers Talk and as well as on Kathy Mason's channel. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. And give the stream a like and share it with friends and family with whom you'll think will benefit from this. And until tomorrow with our NDE series, love you guys very much, and we will see you then.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Omar.
No, I'm not a writer. Okay.